Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. Very honored to be joined by Jim Carbaugh. So thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Love it.
Yeah, so I know this is going to be a good conversation because we just had a little quick conversation and I'm like, we got to hit record. This is too good. So I want to jump into it. But first, I want to hear about your backstory and what brought you to doing what you do today and the people that you serve.
Yeah. Well, um, way back when I was young, I became interested in getting into education. Always was an athlete, so I got into coaching and all those things. So obviously that gravitated myself into being a teacher, and then from there gravitated into being an administrator. But the whole time through that, I used, as you know, I did just did a TED talk, but the whole time through that, I took a lesson that I had was given to me by my grandfather. Just said, I need to share this. And I've been doing that for the last 35 years. And then as I walked away from education right before the pandemic, just because there was an opportunity, I decided that I'm not done. I was just done with education. And I was mentoring some new administrators and teachers. And I thought, you know what? I just need to keep this going. So been on that mission to just spread the whole meaning behind, what we need to do to learn. And we should learn every day.
Yeah, I love that. And it's like the impact it just gets bigger when you're
Yep.
doing top down. It's like you can impact a few people, but when you start impacting other people who can now impact people, it's just like the mission grows. So I
Right.
love that. It's amazing. So talking about like that learning, because I think it's a common misconception is that we go to school and then learning stops. We should know everything that we need to know and then just go about life. But we know that's very false. Learning is an ongoing thing. But can you talk about how we can cultivate learning in ourselves where we can become a lifelong learner and give ourselves some grace in that process?
Yeah, it's amazing, and I used to always say that in school, I don't even know if we're really taught how to learn. We're just taught to absorb facts and information, and we're told that these things are going to help us down the road. But I always look at the thing that we get information, and then we get knowledge. But until we take information and connect it with the knowledge and start to create wisdom, right? We're really not moving forward. So we have to really, and I really tried to do that both as a teacher and as an administrator, that we're learning every day. And to do that, the first thing we have to do is we have to learn how to listen. And a lot of us don't do that. I mean, we really, really don't. I mean, it's like people even listen to this there'll be stuff in the back of their head. And are you really like tuned in? It's kind of like having the music in the background. And I always would tell kids, if you're studying with music in the background, are you really getting what you're trying to study? Because that stuff, that noise is there. So yeah, for us to be lifelong learners, we have to listen. And I think we need to also realize we don't know everything. And that's the journey of it. I mean, I have several neighbors who are up in their 80s and they literally tell me every day, and I think a lot of this got to the internet, but they're always on the internet because they just want to keep themselves occupied. They learn something new every day and they'll share it with me. And sometimes I'm going, oh yeah, I know that. So yeah, I think we just need to really tune. I mean, listening is the key. I mean, and I know but 50% around that way of our communication is through this listening. But when we start to learn, typically 85% of what we learn, we start by hearing something first. And then it either sparks our investigation or we stop it there. Um, so I think you have to find the things that are passionate and don't throw away the things that aren't passionate
Mhm.
because they're bits and pieces. I always made the joke. I don't know that I ever used algebra in my 35 years, but there's thinking skills involved in algebra and there's solving problems. And you don't think of the A as a number and the B as a number, but I've got this problem A and now I've got this B. I need to get here. What do I do?
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's my first step is we need to listen.
Yeah, 100%. And I find that a lot of people listen to respond rather than listening to understand. There's a
Yeah,
huge gap there.
that was the first lesson I was given. Was don't listen to respond because then you're not and sometimes we all get in those conversations. We get caught up in the one ups,
Mhm.
or someone's telling us a story and we don't even give them the joy of having that story. We interrupt them. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I did that.
Yes.
Just be quiet and let them share because the thing is we can glow off of their energy, right?
Yeah.
Like at the end of it, we can say, I did the same thing, but boy, I wasn't excited as you were, or man, you just brought back all the emotions I had when that happened to me.
Mhm.
Instead of
Totally.
just
Yeah.
cutting it off. And we had, I just went to England. Oh, I've been there. Well, then why do I want to tell you?
Mhm.
You know everything, right?
100%. Yeah, you can take it as an opportunity to connect with the person, or in
Yeah.
that instance, it becomes a disconnection where you're like, well, I'm not telling you anymore if that's how the response you're going to give me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny when in listening, I would always when I was dealing with parents or kids and even teachers at times when we were talking, sometimes I'd look at them and say, "So what about what I just said do you like?" And if they would say, "Well, gee, I don't know," or then I realized they weren't listening to what I was saying.
Mhm.
They were putting in the time, and I always would say, if you have a question, which is more important than the answer, but you have to listen to the answer. Don't just ask questions thinking, and we've all been in classes, or we may even have done that where we raise our hand, we ask a question just to, because we think it'll
Mhm.
score us points.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I really try to keep it to where if I'm going to ask a question, it's something I really want to know, and
Mhm.
then I'm going to pay attention. And then people always say, "Well, you're always taking notes." Well, yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
can't
Yeah.
remember everything, but yeah, really tune in. And a lot of times in meetings, when I discuss this with some people who are business owners, say, you're going to have a meeting and you're asking for a solution to a problem, and everyone's coming in with their idea, right? Well, then I should be able to say, "Here's my idea," but before you can, like, say, "Well, here's my idea," you should say, Jim, I really like some of the things you talked about there.
Mhm.
And you know what? Here's my idea, because we're going to find out in the room. We probably have a lot of connecting fibers,
Mhm.
so let's go with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just show people you're listening. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really important.
100%. And just the acknowledgement of like, yes, I hear what you're saying. Cause that goes such a long way when you feel like you're being heard versus like people just going through the motions, like, let's just get through this and move on. It's like when you feel like you're being heard, it's like you can almost let your guard down, like, okay, because I feel like so many people lead with ego and they don't want to be
Oh,
wrong, and they don't want the vulnerability is out the window. So when the vulnerability is out, we lead with ego. It's like we're all on our own island and there can't be connection.
yeah, we get caught up in that, especially as adults, if we're dealing with kids,
Yeah.
or even if we always think the older person has to have all the answers.
Mhm.
And I would tell kids, I'm not going to know all the answers. I would tell parents, I don't know that answer right now, but I will guarantee I'll get back to you with an answer. I'm going to investigate it. And the other thing I think is always important is I never really, I always tried to get rid of the response when someone was, if you're telling me something and go, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel."
Mhm.
I don't know that.
Mhm.
So my best response to you is to say, "Well, I'm trying to understand, so help me understand further."
Mhm.
I mean, that really tells you I'm listening. Because if
Yeah.
I'm saying to you, "Well, I know how you feel," well, then I don't know if you're just kind of shrugging me off or what.
Mhm.
Do you really understand? Because I may never have gone through that. And even if I
Yeah.
did, probably a pretty good chance it was a different situation.
Mhm.
And I'm not you. I don't have your emotions, your back. I mean, let's face it, we're all our background,
Yeah.
right? No matter how we respond to something, it's all based on everything we've been through.
100%. Yeah. And that's so right. Like our background forms our lens. So we could experience the same exact thing, but we're going to see the situation very differently and
Yeah, I mean,
experience
we
it differently.
often words are funny because we can throw words out to people, and the biggest one I always talk about is success, right? Well, what is
Yeah.
success to you, and what's success to me?
Mhm.
And for you, and the other one that always got me was potential. I would sit in meetings and people would say, "Well, they're not living up to their potential." Well, whoa, whoa, whoa! How do you know what their potential is? Do you know their back? I mean, you may have an idea of what you
Mhm.
think they can reach just based on what they've done. Well, share that and tell them that, but don't tell them they haven't reached it.
Mhm.
Better yet, help them get there. Don't
Mhm.
just tell somebody they haven't reached their potential, right? I
Yeah.
mean, help them
100%.
get there.
Yeah, and that was one thing that came through your TED Talk and I was listening to is that message of like empowerment. Like how do we help people grow and show the value in themselves? How has that evolved with what you've done? Like how have you been able to cultivate that culture in what you've done?
Well, it's funny because that really has become my song and dance. And
Mhm.
and I've actually I've created with some people that I work with. I've actually used that LEARN acronym: listen, ethics, attitude, respond, respect. Excuse me,
Mhm.
and no, I've actually used that as a journal prompt.
Mhm.
So hey, let's take a look at the end of your day. Listen, what did you hear today? And was it of any importance? What did you listen to? What did you pull from that? What did you glean? And then ethics, did you do the right thing? Did you add value? Because that was always the big thing for me.
Mhm.
Doing the right thing is I'm adding value, right? So did you add value? And then your attitude, that's a usually I told them I would say that's a one or that's a yes or a no. You
Mhm.
know, were you positive today or were you negative? And if you were positive or negative, try to think why.
Mhm.
Because if you were positive, try to pull that? So why were you able to be positive, even though it was a negative situation or whatever, and learn from that? And then obviously respect, and then the big one was always no, right? How did you handle no? Did you give a no? Did you find another way around? Because the one thing that I've learned about no and everything, and through my lessons, is the fact that we only get to a yes by encountering no's.
Mhm.
And sometimes if we listen enough to the no's, it points us right to the yes, because we're getting no's for a reason.
Mhm.
But if we look around, there's the yes looking right at us. And then our mindset, if we have it right, if we're really looking for our goal, it may not be what we've envisioned, but there it is. There's our goal.
Yeah.
We got these no's, but right there it is. So let's take the yes. The door's always open. I'm being shown the closed doors. Well, then don't keep trying to pound on the closed doors, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think that just resonates with people.
Mhm.
And it's simple. It really is.
Yeah.
And I just try to get people to realize that out of all those things, somehow something can resonate with
Mhm.
you.
100%.
You
Yeah.
know, just pick one of those things and let it
Mhm.
resonate. The other thing that I always tell them, I've started my day for the last 40 years with two questions every morning.
Mhm.
Why am I here? Right? And what's going to be my legacy?
Mhm.
So when you say, why am I here? I always tell them you can only have three things on that list. Why? And it isn't, why am I here to save the world? No, why are you here today? What is your goal today? What are the three things? And then your legacy is those things that you've done. What's going to be your legacy at the end of the day, that you've completed those things?
Mhm.
Because we don't build a legacy at the end of our life. We build it every day.
Mhm.
So, it's funny. I would always show students, I would show teachers, I say, come here, look what's on my desk. When I walk into my office, when I walked into my classroom, I say to myself, why am I here?
Mhm.
And what's going to be my legacy?
Yeah, such great questions, because when you ask yourself good questions, you get
Yes.
good answers. But
Yeah.
I find
Yeah.
many of us get stuck in those questions that give us negative answers that move us in a poor direction. And as you're speaking, it's like, it's so funny because I literally, before we just did this interview, I was watching an interview between Ed Milet and John Maxwell, and they were talking about, are you accepting your life, or are you living your life intentionally? Like, are you moving in an intentional direction, or are you just accepting what is and allowing life to move you? And
Right.
yeah. And so, like, those questions that you ask yourself, it's really about setting those intentions. Like, what do you want your life to look like? And I love that. I think they're great questions to ask.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, where are we at if we don't ask ourselves in the morning, why am I here? What am I going to,
Yeah.
if we let it up to, and there has to be a plan. No one's ever gotten to their goal
Hmm.
by just happening it to happen. And if
Hmm.
they did get to a goal that by happening it happened, then it probably wasn't really a really strong goal, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I always tell kids, like, I want to be on the team. Well, then don't get upset that you're not playing, because you set your goal of being on the team, right?
Totally.
You
Yes.
know, well, if I want to be the starter, well, then I'm just getting ready to speak to some students in a week. And the big thing is I'm going to share with them is everything you want, there is going to be a need and a do.
Hmm.
You can't have a want and not have to need something and then do something. I
Hmm.
can want something all day, but there's something I need to do for that to get there. And so you have to identify what that is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, again, if my goal is to be a starter, well, then if you're not ready to embark on what I need to do, well, then don't set yourself as that goal, because
Hmm.
it's not easy.
Hmm.
But our perception sometimes of the people who are, we think it's easy because we don't look in the background what they were doing. You mentioned John Maxwell. I saw him speak
Hmm.
several years ago, and he said he had a fellow ran into him. He says, "I want to be just like you," and he said, "Well, you'll never be just like me. You've never been through what I've been through, and you've never done what I've done.
Hmm.
Start being you."
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
100%.
yeah.
Yeah. That.
And how often we see that, right? People want to be Michael Jordan. People want to be these athletes, but
Mhm.
they make it look so easy.
Hmm. Yeah. And that's what exactly. You don't see the grind. You see the guts and the glory. It's like everything is so perfectly curated on social media. You think that everyone's life is great and things just happened and luck was on their side. It's never luck. It's those hours that they put in the middle of the morning and the night and grinding when no one's looking. Those are what separate the ordinary from the great. And that's what people don't see. And
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And you're absolutely correct. And that's,
Mhm.
yeah, everyone is, well, how come that person has so many, I don't know what they're doing on social media. There's, again, you have to value that. You're gonna, if you want to have 1 million followers, then you're probably going to have to create a lot of content.
Mhm.
You're going to have to get it out there. And then you have to be content that's going to intrigue people.
Mhm.
If that's your goal. Um,
Yeah.
I focus my goal on just trying to get out the word that that's, look, if we just learn every day,
Mhm.
we're going to be a better person for it. Our society will be better for it. And if you think about it, every decision I've ever made, good or bad, I've been a part of, and that all comes back to my values and my ethics. And
Mhm.
every time, if I go back and really look at decisions that I've made that weren't good, I didn't consider my ethics, my values. I went
Mhm.
outside of my parameter, and that's why it wasn't a good decision for me. That's why it doesn't feel good now. And if I'd listened to myself or not get caught up in, well, everyone else is doing it, or this seems like a good idea at the time, even though I know it isn't. I mean, it's if you don't follow your ethics, if you don't follow your values, you're going to make bad decisions. And I
Yeah.
can guarantee if you go back and do a self evaluation, you'll find out that you stepped outside your boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
You
with
know,
that, sometimes from what I found, many people don't even know what their values are. It's like you're just going about life and they're like, what are my values? And I think it's really hard to lead a life when you're not even clear on what is valued to you. And it's like, that
absolutely.
is the North Star. It's like you may deviate from the course, but it's going to keep you directed. But when people lack the awareness to even know what they value, is it connection? Is it family time? Is it freedom? Like some people don't even have the awareness because they're just in survival mode. And how would you say, like, for someone who maybe values are a little obscure to them, how could they start to cultivate and learn what the values are that are meaningful to them?
Yeah, well, I think obviously one of the biggest things that a lot of people struggle with is you got to have some self-reflective. You got to sit back and you got to ask yourself, and I think you really do. You have to disconnect. I was getting ready. You have to disconnect,
Mm.
and you have to ask yourself what's really, really important to you. Like if and everyone's going to put down money. Well, let's just forget money.
Mhm.
Okay, money is not an object. Oh, yes, it is, Jim. Well, money is a means, but is it? You'd be surprised that again, it goes back to that thing, right? When you're on your when you're in that final days or final hours of your life, no one's going to remember your bank account. No one's going to remember you had 3 million followers on Twitter and all that kind of stuff. And
Mhm.
everybody's going to get their 15 minutes, whatever. You have to ask yourself, what does that really stand for? What's my, is integrity important to me? Is it important for me to be a person of my word? And then the thing is, when you have those values, when you really crank down what your values are, you really should hold the people you're going to be with to those values as well. Why would I hang out with somebody who's not got integrity?
Mhm.
If I have someone who doesn't value my time or their time, why would I want? Because that's going to cause a strain on my relationship.
Mhm.
If I value time because I only get so much, and this person over here, they'll call me up and spend forever and getting to no point. Well, then I either need to let them know that, but I got to find a way around that. So yeah, I mean, you have to really be self-reflective, and
Mhm.
that's hard for people. But I think you have to sit down and here's the other thing. I think you need to have like 5 values. Don't
Mhm.
don't have this big long list.
Yeah.
It always would drive me nuts, especially in the school world. We'd have vision and a mission and a statement.
Mhm.
And I would always tell them, our mission in my middle school is that we're going to learn. We're going to listen, have
Mhm.
ethics, have an attitude that's positive, respect, and we're going to understand no. Because that's something you can grab a hold of.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I think you
Absolutely.
need to buy those values and look, we're not, and don't beat yourself up because you don't stick to your values.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm. Yeah. I
That's the
totally.
reflective part. That's the
Yeah.
reflective part. Again, that
Yep.
goes back to why is this happening to me? Oh, okay. Well, I value integrity and I went and made a decision with someone who obviously has no integrity. So now
Yeah.
I got to get myself back. I got to
Absolutely.
get, it's trustworthiness. What are those things that are, and it's, you got to get rid of the physical value, not those things, trust me. And if I look at the people who really make an impact in the world,
Mhm.
money's a part of what they do, but the
Mhm.
reason they get those things, I mean, we talked about, again, you talk about John Maxwell, you talk about, I think it was John Gordon. You talk to these people, they
Mhm.
have integrity. They have people want to follow them.
100%. Absolutely.
You know, they're
Mhm. And
not
they have
after
the
the quick buck.
worthiness.
Yeah,
Yeah. And they
yeah.
believe they're worthy of greatness. They believe that they're responsible for elevating people up. They have a sense of purpose. Like there's a much deeper meaning. And it's like the money was just secondary to what they
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll come.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but you really have to think of I mean, that's drill down those values and write
Mhm.
them down. And I don't think somebody's gonna, if somebody doesn't haven't thought of it, they're not going to sit down today and say, okay, I got my 5 values.
Mhm.
It's going to take some time because
Yeah.
you're probably going to start with a real large list, and you got to really say, what are the keys? What really, and I always say you can do some reverse engineering. And I think it was in the 7 habits, but you do some reverse engineering and you say to yourself, okay, when I'm not around and someone says, Jim Carbaugh,
Mhm.
give me 5 things, what are they going to say?
Mhm.
I want them to be reflective of the values that oh, well, he's got integrity. Oh, he's honest. I want that to be
Yeah.
my reflection. So
Mhm.
what is it I want people to see me as, and then pick the values that are going
Mhm.
to get me there? Because let's
Absolutely.
face it, you can't be a person of bad intentions and have, you can't be the Joker. It just doesn't come out that way.
Yeah, right. It all starts with your thoughts, and then your emotions follow, your actions follow that, and then everything moves in that direction. But if you don't have it right in your head of what that looks like, then it's going to be very wishy-washy of
Yeah, and the hard part with that is when you really
yeah.
start to look at that, people they realize that that sometimes you have to break free of some relationships then.
Mhm.
And that's
Yeah.
tough, and not be as
Mhm.
committed because sometimes the relationships are the things that are messing with your values, and
Mhm.
that's tough. But
Yeah.
again, you want a purposeful life.
Yes.
I think if we all strive to make a positive mark, world, and be remembered, what a better place it'll be.
That's it. 100%. Yeah. And that it is through that legacy. It's the energy you leave, the imprint you leave on this world, leaving the world a better place than when you found it. And that's really what it's about. And it's like, what does that look like? And it's different for every person, but
Yeah,
that's an individual journey of figuring out like, what does that look like for you, and what's the impact that you're here to make? And it's a lot of self-discovery. It's not an overnight thing. It's a lot of that self-discovery.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And if you
Mhm.
sat in a boardroom with, say, your leadership team, and you said, okay, I want everybody to come in a month from now, and I want you to have your 5 top core values that you feel. I,
Mhm.
I guarantee you, if you put those all up on a board and you said, okay, we're not even going to put people's names down, just have them on a piece of paper. We're just going to start to write them. All of a sudden, you'd find this common boom, and you probably would come up with 5 or 6 that
Yeah.
everyone in the room go, that's part of me, that's me, or that's all me,
Mhm.
and now you find out that you're all on the same
Mhm.
page. You're all heading in the right
Yes.
direction. You all value the same thing.
Mhm.
And it's funny, we, recently in talking to someone, and they were talking about they changed their interview process,
Mhm.
and they have all those questions they always have. So, we started asking questions about people's values,
Mhm.
started about their mission, all those kind of things. Because you should have because they started to realize that we have a certain mission in our company,
Mhm.
and we're going to hire somebody. They may be the best CPA, whatever, but if they're not within our values,
Mhm.
we're going to end up having a bad relationship.
Yeah.
You
100%.
know?
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's like the company's dream has to fit in the little dreams of other people. It's like you have to
Yeah.
keep elevating each other for everyone to work on the same mission. It's like, if you're rowing a boat, you can't have one person trying to row the opposite direction. That's not going to work.
No,
Everyone.
it's yeah. If you're going to have a mission
Yeah.
statement, you should be hiring for that mission statement.
Yeah.
If your
Absolutely.
company has core values, then that's what you should be hiring for. Because
Mhm.
why would you hire somebody outside of those values?
Yeah.
I don't care
Exactly.
how good they are. And what's funny is you see a lot of sports teams that are successful. They do that.
Hmm.
I mean, they do all those scores and all that kind of stuff. But then they go out and they give them personality tests. They do all kinds of stuff, and they interview them even before they draft them or free agent them, and they want to make sure. Now, there's always the exception. There's always somebody that's so talented. Well, we'll bring him in. But if you ever watch, they don't last on the team too long. They kind
Hmm.
of get used for what
Yeah.
they can get used for, and then they're booted.
Hmm.
But the
Yeah.
teams that are successful, man, they really, really buy into. Everyone's talking about Colorado, right? With Deion Sanders. Well, I think he's just laid out what we're about,
Hmm.
and everyone's bought in. And he was getting a lot of grief. Everybody forgets he was getting grief 6 months ago, 7 months ago, when he was telling people who were scholarship, "Hey, look, if you're not buying into my values and where I want to go, leave."
Hmm.
I mean, they
Yeah.
were writing. They were saying this. He's going to have a horrible season. Well, no.
Yeah.
See, he's got people behind him that they believe
Hmm.
we're in
Yeah.
this together.
Yeah.
You got to get the right people, and I think that's the key.
100%. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And just the level of realizing that we're very connected and we're all connected in some way. And with, as far as your values, have you found that your values evolve, or do you find that they're pretty concrete of what you value in life?
I think, well, they evolve. I think they
Yeah.
change. I think I have three or four. I mean, integrity is really, I want to be a person of integrity.
Mhm.
That's always been at the core of where I'm at. I mean, I could say learn is something that I think is, I want to have those characteristics. I want to make sure that I'm listening to people and that I value them, I'm positive. But yeah, I think the other things evolve. They have to.
Mhm.
Um, and I think you need to be flexible with them too, within a realm, right? That's why I said it. If you say integrity, well, you can't be stiff right here. There's got to be a breaking point on either side.
Yeah.
But yeah, they evolve, and I think there's nothing wrong with that. And that, again, growth is change, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
we're going to grow, we have to change. So our values may change as we get. I mean, let's face it. I can honestly say I don't have the same values I had that when I was, going to college, and I probably should have had these values.
It's a good thing you evolve,
Time
right?
management was not one that was hanging in there.
Yeah. It's good. That shows your growth when you look back
But
and
yeah, I
realize they're
mean,
not the same, right?
I did not value time when I was
Yeah.
in college.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing
And
I
I
want
didn't see
to,
the future. I didn't see the future, right?
yeah,
You didn't see that what I'm doing today, 20 years might make a difference and in
yeah.
connection with people and stuff. I just recently was able to connect after 30 years with some guys that I played in the backfield with, and they're all very
Oh, wow.
well
Yeah.
off business people.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, you don't we all had that conversation and realize those connections
Hmm.
and they're all like, well, now we're going to reach out. We're going to now we got this big connection thing going.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. That's awesome. It's like very cool when you evolve, like you start to attract more people who are evolving at the same rate that you are, I
Absolutely.
find. Yeah.
Yeah, growth. Yep, growth attracts growth. People who are
Yeah.
growing, yeah. Why, and again, why would you hire somebody who doesn't want to grow?
Hmm.
That's
100%.
that old question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And to me, it was always like people, oh, we just tell me you want to be sitting in the presidency. Well, that's not
Yeah.
where that may not be where I want to be.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. One thing I want to kind of go back a little bit of what we were talking about before, but there's something I want to ask you because I want to hear your perspective on it. But
Okay.
failure. So failure is this thing that perfectionists, very much the audience that listens to this, like perfectionism and failure is something we avoid. And like, you were talking about the no's and you need all the no's to find the yes. And
Right.
I want to circle back to that because those no's feel very fearful to perfectionists. Like you don't feel like you try to avoid those no's, but then you feel like you're stuck because you're not getting any
Right.
direction.
Right.
How can you start to change your perspective on failure where you can see it more as a growth opportunity rather than something to be feared?
Well, the first thing I always say is when I don't get something that I consider I want or I get a failure, the
Hmm.
first thing I have to do is I have to sit down and literally have to write down why didn't I why don't what's my perception to why I didn't get it. And the
Hmm.
first thing I have to try to realize, and it usually comes out that way, is you get that thing where you think, oh well, they didn't like me. What didn't I present right? And then I have to really analyze it and break it down so that I realize that failure, there's something to learn here.
Hmm.
And you hear that all the time, but there truly is, you know, because you get a no doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you can't do it right now or with that person or whatever it might be. And the key to that is timing. So
Hmm.
then try to go back. I try to look at the timing of something. Did I hit this? Did I hit something at the wrong time with somebody when I was, we were talking? If I went to a company to talk to them, if I went to a school and it's just
Hmm.
not the right timing, it's not it's, and I can't take it personal.
Hmm.
And that's the hardest thing for what you're saying
Yeah.
is we do look at failures. And the sad part is failures. Sometimes we don't get a failure and then three positives and then a failure. Sometimes we can get failure, 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 failure,
Yeah.
failure. And that really causes me to pause. If I get two or three no's or I get some failures where I'm doing stuff, that really causes me to step back and really analyze, okay, what's going on here?
Hmm.
It was funny because it was, the dogs will bark, but the caravan keeps going. So what am I barking at? I'm barking at something that's just not connecting.
Hmm.
And I guess there are some of the people say, well, I can't make it all about me because then that brings me down.
Hmm.
Well, it's a learning. Honest to God, it is. I got to write down what is it I'm not getting? What is it I'm missing?
Hmm.
And the other thing is when you get a failure or a no, don't be afraid to ask why.
Hmm. Yeah.
somebody gives you a no and say, well, if you don't mind, I'd like to know why. Now, that may take them off guard, and they're not prepared to tell you.
Mhm.
If they're good integrity and honest, they may very well say, well, it's just not a good timing for us, or Jim, it's just not
Mhm.
something we want.
Mhm.
Uh, but when you fail, ask. I always remember, you know, uh, I remember asking the coach, why can't I be the quarterback?
Mhm.
Right? Well, we've got 8. You make
Mhm.
number 9. We've only
Mhm.
got 4 running backs. We'd like you to go there. You know, and it was my ego.
Mhm.
No, I wanted to be the quarterback. It was
Mhm.
my dad who later looked at me and said, "Well, so you were going to be number 9. Now you're number 4. So now you're traveling. Now you're on the field
Mhm.
where before you were sitting at home on
Mhm.
Saturday."
Yeah.
I mean, what's your goal here? Again, go back. What's your goal?
Yeah.
So it's a growth and it's a shift.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's for the people who listen to this, it really is. It's going to seem kind of repetitive, but you really have to step back
Mhm.
and look at, okay, what didn't I get, and then start to analyze, and don't make it you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Don't make it you. Don't break down. I didn't get this because me. Boom, boom. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. No, 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 no. You attack it from the point that I'm good enough. I have the best thing in the world here.
Mhm.
What didn't connect?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it because it can become very personal very quickly. Like, why does this always happen to me? What's wrong with me? But like, I like how you phrase that and just learning from that and taking that perspective, like removing yourself from it for a second and seeing the whole situation and realizing it has nothing to do with your worth. It's more just not the right timing, or there may be a better door that's opening up for you, that this had to be shut because it was there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What's funny? Because, yeah, sometimes you can be going down the wrong trail and you never get to where you want. And the other thing is,
Yeah.
the ultimate is, and we should all have one, right? I don't know if you do, I do, but we should all have a confidant slash coach or mentor.
Hmm.
And it's not somebody that it can be somebody you meet with. Again, I mentioned earlier, I mentored incoming administrators and some new teachers and some
Hmm.
other people, young people. I just had some phone calls the other day from some people who were former athletes of me reaching out to me and saying, I didn't know you were doing that. And when you know somebody you can just bounce it off of, and they're not going to say, well, here's what you should do, Jim.
Hmm. Yeah.
They're going to be able to come back with some really good questions that help you reflect, because sometimes we can't question ourselves
Hmm.
because we're in that defensive mode.
Yeah.
So even if, for instance, I mean, I now know Kelly, so it might be one of those things that I send you an email and say, hey, I'm really struggling here. Do
Yeah.
you got 15 minutes
Hmm.
to bounce something off of you? I'm really trying to get people to buy into this, and they're not. So what do you think?
Hmm.
Now I've got to be open to take what we call the criticism,
Hmm. Yeah.
but
No,
get that feedback from somebody else, because we're too hard on ourselves and we sometimes can beat ourselves down.
hmm.
And a lot of times when I share that with my confidants, my
Hmm.
people that I talk to, I'll go, wow, never thought of it that way.
Hmm. Yeah. And I find even just saying it or writing it makes you process it differently. So it's like, get it out of your head, and that's part of the battle. But then you're right. Like, if you have somebody you can bounce it off and they give you their perspective, it does help you get out of your head enough where you can start gaining
Yeah.
some
And,
clarity.
and don't yeah, and
Yeah.
don't be afraid to have a coach. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
somebody in your profession. It just has to
Right.
be somebody. That was probably the greatest thing that happened to me early in my career as administrator. The principal who hired me in my first teaching job found out I
Hmm.
became administrator, called me up and said, I want to stop and I want to congratulate you. He
Hmm.
came by once a month and he looked at me and said, no matter what we talk about, it never leaves this room. So
Hmm.
what's going on? How you feeling about being an assistant principal?
Yeah.
And he never once gave me an answer, but he always had a whole lot of good questions. Well, how do you think that should be handled? Well, do you think maybe you need to rewrite the student
Mhm.
handbook? Is that as a problem? All those things just came around, and it put it on me, but it also solved my problems.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. And it's just again, bringing awareness where you have to figure out your own
Right.
solution, but you have guidance to do that. And then that's such a key point, because I think sometimes people are like, well, just show me the way. No, there's no way. You have to figure it out your own way. Like,
It's ultimately the coach. I mean,
yeah.
I always say that we'll go to the gym and we'll hire a coach or a trainer. If we have kids,
Yeah.
hey, so and so was a pitcher. I'll hire him to be my pitching coach and
Hmm.
whatever. And then we say, well, get a coach for yourself. Well, I don't need a coach. And again, what does a coach doesn't do it for you? When you go to the gym, the trainer doesn't lift the weights for you.
Yeah.
They look at you and say, okay, what is it you want? Well, I want to be
Exactly.
faster. I want to lose some. Okay, well then here's what we're going to do. And they
Yeah.
monitor it. You can express to them, I don't think we're getting where we're going, and they can reevaluate. You can say, I'd like to try this. So it's the same thing in your life. Why not do that? And we try to, it's not a knock on our spouses, it's not a knock on our best friends. But we
Mhm.
need somebody sometimes disconnected,
Yes. Yeah.
because they're going to give us a disconnected answer. They don't have all the background, they don't have all that stuff. And frankly, sometimes they'll give us an answer that might upset us, and they're not worried about that.
Hmm. Totally. Yeah.
Or if I'm your friend and well, if I tell you
Yeah.
this, you're not going to be real happy.
Yes, it gets blurred lines when you have a different relationship with
Yeah.
versus like a coach is like there to guide you. And it's like you could do things on your own, but if you have someone who's a step ahead of you, they know the path and they know how to help you get there. And that's the most beautiful thing about having a coach and someone you can bounce those ideas off of, because they've forged the path and now they're just going to guide you along, but you're the one who has to walk it. They're not going to walk it for you.
Yeah. It's funny. I did a quote, and it caught a lot of traction on Twitter.
Mhm.
Actually, I did a 30-minute video where I had a meeting with somebody, and I told him, I said, the hard part about life is it gives you the test before it gives you the lesson.
Mhm.
And I said, but you know what the answer to that is?
Yeah.
Find somebody to go along on your journey with you that's already
Mhm.
been there.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on a trail, I do a lot of hiking. If you're on a trail, people walk by you, you have no problem saying to them, "Hey, what's it like up there?" You know,
Mhm. Yep.
how are things, all this kind of stuff. Well, if you want to find out what's ahead of you, ask the people coming back. But again, if life is, again, it gives you the test before the lesson. Well, then
Mhm.
bring somebody along that's been there.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's we don't have to do this alone.
Yep. Yeah. And I feel like that's
We
really
choose
what,
to.
yeah, that's kind of like what our purpose is. Every one of us is like to serve the past version of ourselves. Like we're here to guide the person who is a little bit behind us. And then there's somebody ahead of us to guide us to the next step. And it's
Right.
like we just become each other's purpose in that whole
Yep.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, circle back. I mean, people who are struggling with
Mhm.
failure and knows,
Mhm.
you really have to. It's hard. It really, and it takes practice. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight because
Mhm.
we've been conditioned. Hey, one of the first words we ever learn is no, right?
Mhm.
And we
Yeah.
learn no is final,
Mhm.
and we have to start to learn it. A lot of times, no doesn't mean no; it means not yet.
Mhm.
So I have to ask myself, why did I get the no? And sometimes
Yeah.
it'll be a hard lesson. I got the no because I'm just not the right person, or I'm
Mhm.
not fast enough. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, then what's the next step? Does that mean it's over?
Mhm.
Again, you look. I do rely a little bit, but you go back to again a sports team. I want to be this. Like I want to be the quarterback. Well, no, but then there's 10 other positions, and
Mhm.
if my goal is to play, then other than my ego, because I want to be the quarterback,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Absolutely. No,
Ego,
totally.
ego. I always say
That's
ego is edging out good options, man. It just edges out good options.
yes, absolutely. And if we get stuck too much in that,
Oh.
you're gonna miss a lot in your life.
Yeah, but yeah,
100%.
the no's are tough, and I can honestly say that it's even tough for me. I mean, you have to write down, okay, I went and did this, I got no, and then you have to, and sometimes you step away and you got to come back. I think the other thing is don't. The last thing I would say is don't beat yourself up on it.
Mhm.
The hardest thing is, there's a gentleman out there. He says we all have saboteurs, and there's all kinds of things in our mind,
Mhm.
and everybody has one saboteur. Everybody has the same saboteur. It's called the judge.
Mhm.
We all judge ourselves. And one of the ways to deal with that is when you hear that coming in, you literally talk to it in your mind. You just say, no, 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 I'm not going down that road.
Mhm.
When you start to say to yourself, oh, I'm not good. No, 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 I'm not saying that. I'm not going to tell myself, because self-talk is important.
Mhm.
So don't
Absolutely.
let yourself talk yourself down.
Mhm.
You get into, oh, nope, I'm not going there. I'm going to go home. I'm going to analyze why I didn't get this. Don't overthink it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's tough for all of us.
Yes, 100%. Yes, you get in that rumination cycle of just over and over and over again, and it is so true that self-talk, it just it will either make or break you. You can self-talk and serve you or self-talk and
Oh yeah.
destroy you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always do remember, even when I
Yeah.
get stuck, I always remember that there isn't anybody who's done anything great that didn't receive a no. When you
Mhm.
think about it, because
Yeah.
those are the things that make you stronger, right?
Yep.
It's the old thing that good sailors, you can't have a good sailor that just hangs out in the dock. He has to go out into
Mhm.
the rough seas and learn how to do it.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
and that's the guy you want on the boat with you. It's been in
Yeah.
this situation, right?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
just got to remember that. You just can't let yourself get beat down. No's Every
Yeah.
great person has had, and even though we don't see it that way,
Yes.
right? They've
Yeah.
all got no's, and they spark them to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what it's like. It's so good to like read people's journeys where they share those rejections. They share the authentic, things that did not go well, because it just validates that you have to receive these no's. Like that's part of the process. But I think sometimes people get stuck up in that everybody has this like we were saying before, perfect thing, and just they lucked out and it just worked out for them. It's just not reality. And once you start to learn people's journeys, you realize like, oh, this
Oh
I
yeah.
must be on the right path if I'm getting no's, because this is what everybody else did,
Yeah, well, again, the
Yeah.
no's are guiding you where you need to go.
Mhm.
They really, if you really truly look at them, because if you say, "I got the note here," well, what is my ultimate goal? There's always many paths to where you want to go.
Mhm.
A lot of those paths we may not want to take.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
That's the
uncomfortable.
problem.
Yes.
Maybe there's some education I need. Maybe there's some actions I need. Whatever. We think, again, we all want to start at the top, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants to graduate college and go get the $100,000 job, and it
Mhm.
doesn't really happen that way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can further beat yourself up when you envision your life to look one way and it doesn't look that way, but it's just kind of trusting the process that it will work out the way it was meant to. And that can be hard. But I think just having conversations like this where we can get these reminders, even if you're far along your journey and you believe this and understand this, it's good to hear it again. And if you feel like you're struggling with that failure and the mindset around it, it's good to hear this maybe for the first time, where you can start to rewire your brain and see it differently. So it's important to always have these reminders
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
conversations.
There's an acronym I learned years ago when I became a main guy, and it's called PACE.
Hmm.
And PACE is, you want to make a plan,
Hmm.
then you want to make sure you have an alternate plan, and then you want to have a contingency plan, and then you want to have an emergency plan.
I
And if
like
you
that.
write all those things
Yeah.
down, right? If you do all those things, you say, okay, here's my plan,
Hmm.
and it's not going there. Well, what's my alternate plan? Okay, that's not going. Okay, what's my contingency plan? So ultimately, what's my emergency plan? So you're not ever caught off guard, because if you put everything into the plan, we take a
Yeah.
trip, right? We go on a vacation, and everything's going to be down that highway, and we hit all kinds of stuff. Well, now all of a sudden we're all flabbergasted. We're
Mhm.
losing it. Well, if we had an
Yeah.
alternate plan, we can take this route. Maybe the contingency plan is, well, you know what, we're going to stay the night and let the traffic clear, and then we're going to go. And maybe it's a blizzard, and we say, well, okay, we're going to turn around and go home.
Yeah.
That's, it's not what we want. But yeah, I mean, but if you look at every adventure you take out into, you say to yourself, okay, what's my plan?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
now what are my what's my alternate plan if something doesn't, in contingency, and in my emergency?
Yeah. It's a really good
That
action.
helps a lot with those no's.
Yeah, that I like that. I haven't heard that before, and I like that a lot. That's it's just planning for those imperfections in life. That's really what it is, because life is imperfect. And
If you plan for the imperfections
yeah,
don't get in the way, right?
yeah, 100%. Keep moving forward. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. When you talk about, even though you get to know, you got to realize this is where you're at now in your travels,
Hmm.
and one more step. Even though you got to know one more, as long as you're taking one step, you're always moving forward. And I know that's easy for like me to say, and we tell people, but
Hmm.
it truly is. If you look at where you were 5 years ago and you're in the same place, well, then you are making some bad decisions.
Hmm.
None of
Yeah.
us are where we used to be.
Yeah.
And if we want to be where we're going to be at, well, then we have to look at our future self and say, okay, what is it we want,
Hmm.
right? What is it we want? And then what is it we have to do to get there?
Hmm.
And there's things I
100%.
might need. So then you start to make those lists. You create that pace, that plan.
Yeah, and going back to self-reflection, taking that time to disconnect and ask yourself those questions of what do you want in life, and what do you want, not what does life tell you that you want. Yeah.
Exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. And it has to,
Yeah.
you would go back to the ethics and go back to your value. It has to feed you,
Yeah.
And so if
Mhm.
my values should feed me. My values shouldn't be something that is just topical, just something that I think everyone, it's like I'm wearing it on my shirt and says all these things. No,
Yeah.
again, it goes back to, it's what reflected from me. People say, oh,
Mhm.
this is what he is. Well, then it's what I'm doing has got to feed me. So that's, if you're getting no's, sometimes that's a hard one. You get a hard no, you start to say to yourself, am I really doing what I'm on, on purpose? Am I really doing what why is it I really want to do this? Is that for
Mhm.
self gratification? Is it for me making better?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes we're so disconnected from ourselves, we can't even answer why are we doing what we're doing, because you're going through the motions for maybe a decade or so. And you're like, well, I've always done this. This isn't what I do.
Yeah, there's the
Yeah.
hard one. Yeah, I've always,
Yeah.
and we
So,
all know that quote, right? If you keep doing the same thing, getting the same results, why are you doing it, right? We've heard
and
that a million times.
as the
Yeah, well,
definition
it's
of
like I would,
insanity. Yeah.
yeah, like I would say to you, I
Yeah.
mean, you decided to start doing a podcast. So if I
Yep.
looked at you and said, why did you do that? See,
Hmm.
you had that was your purpose. And I'm
Yep.
sure if you go back and you were to share, there's probably a lot of things that didn't need. The first podcast you did might have been horrible.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, but it didn't stop you.
Yeah.
And it's one of the
Exactly.
things that I do admire about a lot of people, a lot of young people who are doing
Hmm.
stuff online, creating stuff on YouTube and stuff, is they'll tell you they just get into it. They don't even know what they're doing. And if you look at
Yeah.
their first videos and then you look at their 100th video, all of a sudden they figure out the graphics, they figure out all this
Mhm.
stuff. It's that science, and it's that experiment. It's like being a 3-year-old again, right?
Hmm.
No one's
Yeah.
told you you can't,
Yeah, exactly.
and just
Yeah.
because you don't get it the way you want, well, I'm going to work around. I'm going to figure it out.
That's it. Yeah.
You got to fall forward, right? And I think you got to. They always say fail forward,
Yep. That's exactly
and
it.
don't be afraid. And the other thing is when you fail, the only person who's really judging you about that failure is yourself.
Hmm.
There,
Yeah.
you perceive everyone's going, oh, there, that Jim, he's failed. He's doing this. It's not working again. He's always doing this stuff. It does never. When's he going to figure it out?
Yeah.
They're not saying that.
Exactly. And you
There's
know
always
what?
one. Yeah.
No one can judge you unless they're in the arena too. It's like,
There you
unless
go.
they're doing it, who cares what they say, because they're not the ones doing it. Like, if they're in the arena and they're falling on their face, then they can say something, but you can't say if you're sitting from the sidelines.
Yeah, and I wish more
Yeah.
younger people would get it because again, if you fail,
Yeah.
it has to feed you. I mean, it's kind of like you have to
Yeah.
really kind of have that humble attitude, like, well, that didn't work. Okay, now
Yes.
what? And you sit
Yeah.
back and you do some things. I mean, I've done that. We're trying to design my own website, and I spent the whole day,
Yeah.
and then hit boom, and next thing the whole thing went away. I'm going, oh, great. So I
Hmm.
spent that was a great,
Yeah.
wow, you
Yeah.
know. But what I learned a whole lot, and I was able to recreate it.
Yep.
Yeah,
It's so true. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's uncomfortable. Like you're saying, like, the first podcast episode was super uncomfortable for me. I'm like, I'm just going to record this. I can't even tell you how many times I stopped and started. I'm like, oh, I don't like that. And then now it's like, what? I'm embracing the imperfections, but that was part of like learning and growing, is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's that authentic side, but same thing. I had a coach who was like, you need to just do it, and it's like, you jump in, you get that little bit of confidence in someone saying you need to do it, you do it, and then you gain confidence as you do it.
Yeah, if not you, then who? If it's
Yeah.
your idea and you don't want to be the producer of this and say I
Yeah.
got to go find somebody to do this. It's your passion, you do it. And
Exactly.
and again, people want genuine conversation.
Hmm.
Scripted questions and answers and stuff. And I think that's what people want in the world anymore. We
Hmm.
want to see real people, real
Yeah.
struggles, and how they solve it. And it's not
Hmm.
perfect. I mean,
Yeah.
to sit here and tell you that I don't have issues with no's once in a while would be a lie.
Oh,
I mean, that's
100%.
just the way it is. I
Exactly.
mean, I've gotten some no's, recently. I mean, well, perfect. Getting the TED Talk, I applied to 24 different TEDx's,
Oh,
and
wow.
I got 23 no's. So
Wow. That's
I
yeah.
mean, but you know what it was? I wanted to get the message out,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking this is, and everyone's going, oh, it's going. It just, I felt like I wanted to get to a bigger audience,
Hmm.
and I don't know. I mean, now my next problem is, well, how do you get that out there? I don't know. People are telling you got to do all, so now I'm trying to figure that all out.
Yeah.
But you know what? I got 23 no's, and all of a sudden I got it. I just stayed
That's
the
awesome.
course.
Yeah, that's it. The tenacity, just staying with it, believing like, I meant to do this, I will figure out a way.
Yeah,
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 that's awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because like, that's like that those are those things, that like vulnerability, like, this is real life. Like, I have failed plenty of times in my life too, and I still am going to fail. There's plenty of things, and like, but again, at the end of the day, you're learning things along the way. Like, I'm sure every time you got to know, you learn something, how to tweak it to make it better. And it's like, that's what it is. It's like, you're like fine tuning everything you're doing by getting those no's.
yeah. It's funny. You look at the TEDx. Each TEDx has a theme, right?
Hmm.
And so you have to. So when I got the nose, you had to step back and go, okay, what was the theme of that? And then I
Hmm.
looked at what my talk was about, and I thought, well, it didn't fit in there. I mean, they're trying to create a show, basically.
Hmm.
12, 15 speakers, and
Yeah.
if what I'm going to talk about doesn't fit into their theme, well,
Yeah.
then why would they have me there?
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
like kind of like having a rock and roll show and you're going to bring in the country western guy.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
so that helped you deal with the no's. And then,
Yep.
like you said, it helped you reflect. I got to learn the process because
Hmm.
there is a process,
Yeah.
and you start to see patterns in the application,
Uh-huh.
and you start to think, well, maybe I need to tweak this if this isn't working.
Yeah.
And yeah, if
Yeah.
it's something you passionately want, reflect. It'll come. It'll come.
Hmm.
And timing is the big thing. I
Yeah.
mean, I got picked because the timing was right. The
Mhm.
theme was right. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. And can you look back in your life and realize like, 'cause this is the coolest thing I think in life is like you look back in those things that maybe were aggravating at the time, but then you realize why those doors were shut. Do you find that in your life
Oh
that
yes,
it was meant to
yes.
be shut because, oh, this couldn't have happened and that like it all works out perfectly, but you don't realize it in the moment. Do you find that?
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes it's our ego,
Yeah.
and I would say my grandmother would tell me your bullheadedness that actually you don't get the results that you want because you're stuck on going to get that done this way, and
Yeah.
you keep plowing ahead.
That's
You know, it's kind
funny.
of like, you know, instead of saying,
Yeah.
you know what, why don't I stop going this direction because it's saying no, and let me go over here and
Yeah.
try this, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
sometimes we get a
Yeah.
little too bullheaded about it.
Yeah. And then it becomes like that inner learning too of like learning yourself and how you need to adapt. Yeah. It's
Yeah,
yeah, that's amazing. Well, I feel like we could talk all day about
no,
this
we probably
topic.
could.
I know. But for someone who really resonates with this and wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, you know, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter at Jim Carbaugh and LinkedIn at Jim Carbaugh. I have my own website, jimcarbaugh.com. And on that website, there is a place to connect, to send me an email and stuff. And, you know, I do connect with people. We do Zooms all the time.
Mhm.
Um, my biggest thing is I have no problem talking to people and connecting with
Yeah.
them. We can always work something out. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here to, yeah. I always say, you know, I have it on my website. I have it on my Twitter. I'm here to add value.
Hmm.
You know, we all get to stages in life, and I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of my life in adding value to people,
Hmm.
and making a living has been part of that. Has been a result, you know. But you know, I'm making a comfortable living, and that's neither here nor there. I'm just here to add value. You
Yeah.
know, again, why am I here, and what's going to be my legacy,
Yep.
right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh,
You're living out your questions. Yeah.
I got to. It
100%.
fills me. It makes me feel good,
Yeah.
and doesn't matter what other people think. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there were people who were going to me like, "You're going to go do a TEDx where?" And I'm, you know,
Yeah.
why? Because I want to, because I have a message. And now
Yep.
that they've seen it, they're like, "Wow, I didn't know you knew all that." Well,
Yeah. It's
you haven't
meaningful.
been,
And
you haven't been listening.
that's it. And now you can see the people, it's like a ripple effect. You impact people who watch it, who are going to take a message
Right.
from that, impact other people. So it's like you can see the impact that you're making
Yeah,
through
I'm
that.
actually. It's funny. Through that story, I'm now working with someone to do a children's book
Oh, that's awesome.
based
Very
on that
cool.
on Learn. Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
yeah, it's going to be kind of a graphic novel.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's been kind of
exciting.
really neat pulling out pictures of my grandfather back in the
Oh,
day,
neat.
and just
Oh,
recreating that story and the lesson, of course, through
how
that story.
cool. I love
Yeah,
that. Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome. That's exciting. We'll have to share it once you get it out there. That's
yeah.
awesome.
I will. We'll
Very
stay in touch.
exciting.
We'll stay in touch. If I
Yeah.
can ever be of any more help, let me know.
Yeah, thank you. And I know this, I truly enjoy this conversation. I know for anyone listening, there's so many things to pull out here and just ways to start just thinking about life differently. And again, give yourself grace and just start learning what you can from all those things that you're experiencing in life. And again, thank you so much, Jim, for being here. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, no problem.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.